On April 27, 1944, I departed San Francisco, California on the converted troop ship USS West Point, bound for the Western Pacific. The ship, with a fuel capacity of 1.3 million gallons, sailed without naval escort using a zigzag pattern at speeds of 18 to 24 knots, taking a wide south to west arc to avoid sea lanes and elude enemy submarines. There was constant emphasis on safety from torpedoes, aircraft, fires, and collisions. The ship's crew practiced a number of drills on a continuous basis. The drills included general quarters, damage control, abandoned ship, fire, and medical casualties. Live fire exercises were conducted for the ship's various gun mounts, using star shells and targets launched over the side to maintain proficiency of the gunners. In addition to its radar, there were 12 live lookouts posted on a 24-hour basis to maintain surveillance of potentially hostile contacts. The ship, which was originally designed to carry 2,000 passengers, had been converted to carry almost 19,000 troops, not counting the crew and contingent of Marines to keep order. The troops, most of whom were replacements, were provided only 2 meals per day. The galleys operated 24 hours per day, serving 16 to 20 tons of food each day. Soldiers were allowed 1 hour of exercise per day, which took the form of calisthenics. Their bunks were stacked 5 high in poorly ventilated, below-deck berthing areas. Showers were salt water only to conserve fresh water for drinking and cooking. The accommodations for officers aboard the ship were better, but still very cramped. On May 1, 1944, I celebrated my 34th birthday on board the ship. 10 days later, on May 11th, the ship arrived in Sydney, Australia. The ship took on supplies, but no one was permitted to go ashore. On May 13, 1944, the ship arrived at Milne Bay, located in southeastern New Guinea. My orders had assigned me to the 21st Infantry Regiment, which was part of the 24th Infantry Division, currently engaged in mopping up operations from the recent Hollandia campaign. Hollandia, now known as Jayapura, is located on the north-central coast of New Guinea. The 21st was one of 3 infantry regiments assigned to the 24th Infantry Division during the war. The other 2 of the 24th Infantry Division's infantry regiments were the 19th and the 34th. The circular patch on the left of this slide with the green taro leaf on the red field is the insignia for the 24th Infantry Division. I would wear that patch on the left sleeve of my uniform throughout the war. The patch on the right of the slide is the insignia for the regiment to which I was assigned. There were roughly 15,000 men in an infantry division, and about 3,300 men made up an infantry regiment. In addition to the 3 infantry regiments, there were also a number of other specialized units, such as field artillery, engineer, quartermaster, tank destroyer, ordnance, bomb disposal, signal, chemical, medical, and others that were part of the division. All of these elements combined to make an Army division an impressive force for getting things done. The concept of operations during the war was to assign 12 dental surgeons to each Army division, 2 of them being assigned to each regiment. Therefore, myself and 1 other dentist, assisted by a couple of enlisted dental technicians, were responsible for the dental care of the 3,300 men of the 21st Infantry Regiment. As I indicated, I entered the 21st Infantry Regiment as a replacement officer during the mop-up phase of the 21st's first amphibious combat operation during the war. Though I was readily accepted by the medical staff, these men had just had that life-changing experience of having been through a military campaign that I had yet to experience. Before I continue my story, I think it's important to go back in time a bit to provide some background on the events leading up to the Hollandia campaign, some of which occurred while I was still a civilian. I learned much of this background about the 21st Infantry Regiment as I interacted with its officers and soldiers. The 21st Infantry Regiment had been stationed on Oahu during the Japanese attack on December 7, 1941. The focus of the attack, Pearl Harbor, was located on Oahu, the third largest of the Hawaiian Islands. The 21st had sustained minor casualties when Japanese aircraft strafed the Schofield Barracks and the soldiers of the unit returned fire, downing at least one, possibly two, of the attacking planes. The regiment remained on Oahu through all of 1942 and the first 8 months of 1943. Then, on August 8, 1943, 22 days before I entered the Army, they, along with the rest of the 24th Infantry Division, departed Hawaii for the Pacific Theater of War. At this point, I'd like to make mention of an event, barely noteworthy at the time, that has gained significance through the prism of history. On August 1, 1943, the week before the 24th Infantry Division departure from Hawaii, and about a month before I entered the Army, the PT-109, a Navy fast torpedo patrol boat, was rammed by the Japanese destroyer Amagiri and sunk in the Pacific waters off the west coast of Kolombangara in the Solomon Islands. The PT-109 was commanded by the future 35th U.S. President, John F. Kennedy, who was 26 years old at the time. On November 22, 1963, then President Kennedy, who had survived the war, was assassinated while riding in an open convertible limousine in Dallas, Texas. Kennedy had survived the Japanese destroyer, but not the assassin's bullet. As I mentioned, the 21st Infantry Regiment, along with the rest of the 24th Infantry Division, departed Hawaii on August 8, 1943. Upon arrival in Australia, the division proceeded to Camp Caves, located near Rockhampton on the northeast coast, where it arrived on September 8, 1943. While in camp, the division was provided additional training. Medical staff were given a number of briefings. The Army had placed emphasis on the need to reduce non-combat casualties from tropical diseases and heat. Instruction in the use of salt and water purification tablets was provided. Epidemics of malaria were destroying combat effectiveness. Prevention of malaria was made a command responsibility. Soldiers were instructed to take atabrine tablets as a malaria preventative and to use insect repellent and mosquito netting when possible. Army and Navy aviation units, referred to as malaria control units, were trained and tasked with spraying the insecticide DDT in jungle areas where troops were located. The medical staff were briefed to recognize and treat dengue fever, dysentery, scrub typhus, tropical skin afflictions, and a host of other tropical illnesses associated with the jungle environment. Medical staff learned about uses for the new miracle antibiotic drug penicillin, which was effective for treatment of a wide range of ailments. In addition to these objective hazards to health, medical staff were made aware of the subjective danger of mental breakdown, precipitated by combat, lack of rest periods, recreation, and other environmental factors. On January 31, 1944, while I was still treating patients at the dental clinics at Camp Adair in Corvallis, Oregon, the 24th Division departed Rockhampton, Australia for Goodenough Island off southeastern New Guinea, where amphibious training was provided. When I arrived at New Guinea on May 13th as a replacement officer, before joining the 21st Infantry Regiment in Hollandia, I was required to undertake amphibious training on Goodenough Island along with the other Army replacement troops assigned to combat units. In this photo, landing craft are shown lined up at the water's edge with their ramps dropped. Some of the initially arriving troops were assigned as beach parties to keep the landing sites from becoming congested by directing the movements of troops and the offloading of supplies to designated locations off the beach area. Paul Vetch, a soldier in A Company of the 21st Infantry Regiment, wrote a book about his war experiences called Jungle, Sea, and Occupation. In it, he describes the conditions on Goodenough Island. Quote, Goodenough Island was my introduction to the oppressive heat and humidity of the tropics. Rains could last for days on end. During our stay there, we were set up in canvas squad tents. There were also some army buildings with thatched roofs and others with corrugated iron roofs. Falling coconuts would make a loud bang when they fell on the metal roofs. The thatched roof buildings had large open eaves at the ends. Huge flying fox bats with 4 to 5 foot wingspans would sail through the eaves, attracted by the lights inside. The wildlife in this part of the world was without equal. One night, we observed a 10-foot python crawl through our tent. We were warned about the danger of scrub typhus, which was transmitted by the bite of small ticks that lived in the kunai grass. The disease caused high fever and could be fatal within a few days of onset. To prevent this, we were directed to sleep off the ground on cots with mosquito netting or in issued jungle hammocks. We were also ordered to immerse our clothing in tubs of insecticide and at night to hang our boots upside down off the ground on sticks. In this section, I'll provide some of the background leading up to and including the 21st Infantry Regiment's involvement in the Hollandia campaign in New Guinea. As I mentioned before, I did not arrive to join the unit until the mop-up phase of the campaign. Fighting on New Guinea had been ongoing since January 1942, with the Allied advance proceeding at a slow pace. It was time for a different approach. General MacArthur codenamed the operation Reckless, out of the recognition of the risks that were involved in carrying it out. The plan was greatly assisted by Ultra, the Allied top-secret interception, decryption, and dissemination program against Japanese radio traffic. The plan would also involve an elaborate deception to mislead the Japanese about the location of the next Allied attack. The Japanese were led to believe the Allies were planning their attack at Hansa Bay on the New Guinea northeast coast and massed forces to meet them there. Deciphered Japanese messages alerted the Allies that there were 350 Japanese aircraft stationed at several airstrips on the Sentani Plain near Hollandia, located on the island's north-central coast. The Japanese were planning to use these planes to support the believed attack at Hansa Bay. The airfields on the Sentani Plain were only lightly defended by Japanese ground troops, most of whom were service personnel who did not carry rifles. Operation Reckless would involve an Allied landing at Hollandia behind the Japanese main force at Hansa Bay, thus isolating those forces from air support, reinforcements, and lines of supply. The objective of the operation would be the destruction of the Japanese aircraft and supply bases and the capture of the Hollandia airdrome for subsequent use by Allied forces. 2 U.S. infantry divisions would be involved in the landings at Hollandia, the 41st and the 24th. The 21st Infantry Regiment, as part of the 24th Infantry Division, would be participating in the assault. This would be their first combat experience in the war. As I begin to talk about the combat operations of the 21st Infantry Regiment during the war, I would first like to address a common misconception. The U.S. Army and Navy, along with the Allies, are rightfully credited with the victories in North Africa, Italy, France, and Germany, which led to the defeat of the German army. On the other hand, in the Pacific, the historical spotlight shines brightly on the Navy and Marines, who are well known for their naval battles and amphibious assaults and battle victories at places like Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The point I wish to make, and you will see as I continue my story, is that the Army played a significant role that is sometimes overlooked in the fighting in the Pacific. My unit, the 21st Infantry Regiment, along with many other Army units, was involved in numerous amphibious landings of Pacific islands occupied by the Japanese Army. The war in the Pacific, with its vast territories of enemy occupation, could not have been won by the Marines alone. The ultimate victory required the unified and cooperative efforts of all branches of the U.S. military and those of our allies. Together, all played an important role. As a preparatory action to the landings, a series of Allied bombing raids were staged on March 30th, 1944, on the Japanese airfields on the Santani Plain near Hollandia. The raids, which occurred about 2 weeks before the landings at Hollandia, destroyed about 100 Japanese aircraft while still on the ground. This marked the end of Japanese air superiority on New Guinea. A number of enemy aircraft were also shot down by fighter planes that were escorting the bombers on the raid. This is a photo I took of a damaged Japanese Mitsubishi reconnaissance airplane, its wreckage still visible when I arrived in Hollandia in late May of 1944. Beginning on April 16, 1944, a 217-ship convoy assembled and, to avoid detection, traveled along the route shown here in red. The convoy arrived off Hollandia, now named Jayapura, located on the north-central coast of New Guinea, during the night of April 21st. It should be noted that New Guinea is the world's second largest island. Only Greenland is larger. New Guinea's strategic importance was its location between the Philippines and Australia. This map shows the plan used for the Hollandia landings. The 41st Infantry Division landing area was at Humboldt Bay, shown on the right side of the map. The 24th Infantry Division landed at Tanamera Bay on the left side of the map. The two divisions would employ an overland pincer movement and link up in the center at their assigned objective airfields on the Santani Plain. The landings began at dawn on April 22nd after a supporting naval bombardment at each site. Navy aircraft provided overhead protection to the assault troops in the landing craft. This was the first instance where carrier-based aircraft provided cover to landing forces. This slide provides a close-up of the 21st Infantry Regiment landing beaches at Tanamera Bay. At Tanamera Bay, the 24th Division was able to land but found the beach to be highly unsuitable. Backed by a swamp just 30 yards from the shoreline and with just one exit trail unsuitable for vehicles, Tanamera Bay was quickly written off as a landing site. Faulty intelligence had interpreted the swamp as a road, and the correction was discovered too late. The infantry already ashore encountered small arms and machine gun fire, which was quickly suppressed, and they pressed on towards the airfield objective located on the Santani Plain. A soldier making the assault recalled how dark it was that first night ashore. Our support troops had not followed us. We wondered how we would be resupplied. Many of us spent the night in foxholes that had been abandoned by the Japanese. The mosquitoes were large and numerous and covered us from head to foot. Sergeants reminded us to take our atabrine tablets. The remainder of the 24th Division, mostly headquarters and support units, which was supposed to follow the initial assault waves, were diverted to Humboldt Bay, which had been secured by this time by the 41st Division landings. The 41st Division had achieved complete surprise, and Japanese troops abandoned their positions and fled inland. There was some light opposition encountered. The Japanese had established a large supply dump on the 41st Division's main landing beach at Humboldt Bay, designated White 1. This supply dump had been hit by Allied naval guns, caught fire, and continued to burn. Close behind the initial assault, the Allies landed 4,200 tons of supplies and 300 vehicles onto White 1 on the first day. The beach quickly became congested. Late on April 23rd, a passing enemy bomber spotted the fire and attacked the beach. This caused more fires and killed 24 and wounded 100 more. It also destroyed 60% of all rations and ammunition that had been landed. On April 24th, the beach became more congested with the arrival of the elements of the 24th Division that had been diverted from Tanamera Bay. The fires continued to burn until April 27th. The supply problem was not fully resolved until May 3rd, with the hasty construction of an airstrip at Tommy on the east side of Humboldt Bay. This airstrip was used by aircraft to make supply drops to the advancing troops. Japanese casualties amounted to 3,300 killed and 600 wounded. Allied casualties numbered 157 killed and 1,057 wounded. U.S. forces undertook mopping up operations in the area until June 6th, which, ironically enough, was D-Day in Europe. The 21st Infantry Regiment was responsible for 1,771 enemy killed and 502 prisoners. The 21st suffered only 32 casualties during the entire campaign. In spite of the initial mishaps, with the need to abandon the Tanamera Bay landing beach and supply congestion problems at Humboldt Bay, Operation Reckless had been an unqualified success. Had the initial enemy opposition been stronger, the results could have been disastrous. The Allies quickly made the Sentani airfields operational and were able to mount bombing raids on other Japanese positions on the island. Both Humboldt and Tanamera Bays were developed with naval base, ammunition, repair, and fuel facilities. Several higher headquarters were moved into the area. These facilities played an important role as a staging area for subsequent operations in New Guinea and the Philippines. This photo was taken near the end of mop-up operations around Hollandia. I am on the far left. In this photo, New Guinea looks peaceful and picturesque, but looks can be deceiving. The jungle conceals a great number of potential risks to an unwary soldier. After the war, Paul D. Vetch, a soldier who served with the 21st Infantry Regiment, wrote an excellent account of his war experiences called Jungle, Sea, and Occupation. In his book, Vetch gave a perfect description of what it was like in the jungles of New Guinea. Nightfall is early and sudden. The intense heat of day is quickly replaced by the chill of night. Snug in my jungle hammock with complete zip-in protection from all crawling and flying creatures, my sleep was undisturbed. The camp quieted, but I made no immediate attempt to fall asleep as I shut my eyes and listened to the incredible sounds of the insect and bird life in the nocturnal jungle. All life in the tropical rainforests of New Guinea bursts forth in greater profusion and virulence than probably anywhere else in the world. The insects are voracious and huge. Deadly, poisonous snakes abound. Crocodiles, among the largest in the world, grow to lengths of more than 15 feet. The saltwater crocodiles on the coast have been known to reach 25 feet. I saw my first crocodile. Though it looked passive, I knew these creatures were vicious and when aroused could react and move like lightning. I had read that Australian and New Guinea crocodiles took a constant toll of natives engaged in routine daily activities in the vicinity of brackish streams. Vetch's jungle description continued. The environment included dense, slimy undergrowth, mangrove swamps, and razor-sharp grass up to 8 feet high. In the forest of bamboo and palm trees, the sky is blocked out by tangled patterns of liana vines overhead. The incessant rain releases steam from the murky, stinking marshes choked with algae and decaying material. During the days in the New Guinea jungle, we were never dry. The humidity kept our cotton fatigues saturated with sweat. We were soaked to the skin from sunrise to sunset, though the sun was actually rarely visible when looking up through the towering kanari trees. When we had time on our hands, we would spend hours catching foot-long beetles and tossing them into spider webs spanning the gnarled roots of giant trees. We watched with fascination as the host spider, larger than a man's outstretched hand, would emerge and immobilize the struggling beetle for a later meal. The constant variety of sounds added greatly to the mysterious atmosphere of the jungle. A profusion of birds and insects were constantly emitting their varied forms of communication in the cycle of life. The distinctive calls of the mynas, fever birds, sunbirds, and the hum of chatter of insects come together in a symphony of nature. At night, these noises could make the jungle a horror, as fears, both real and imagined, took over in my mind.